I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to find myself in a mess like this. My name is Jake, and I'm just a regular guy living in a cozy little suburb outside of Atlanta with my wife, Sarah. We've been married for about 6 years, and for the most part, things were good. The mundane routine of daily life, cooking dinner, binge-watching our favorite shows, and taking our dog, Max, for walks, felt comfortable, maybe even a little too comfortable at times. But who doesn't get caught up in the grind, right? Things started to change about 6 months ago. At first, I dismissed it as stress from her job at the marketing firm. She started working longer hours, and whenever I'd ask her about it, she'd brush me off with a quick, "I'm just busy, babe." I tried to be understanding. After all, her job came with its share of pressures. But deep down, there was a nagging feeling that something was off. I noticed she wasn't herself anymore. Sarah used to be so open and affectionate, always making time for us. But lately, she'd come home tired and distracted, scrolling through her phone instead of talking to me. Her laughter, once so genuine, felt forced. I'd catch her glancing at her phone with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and it made my stomach twist. Then one evening, the straw that broke the camel's back happened. I was in the kitchen prepping dinner, fajitas, our go-to favorite, when I heard her in the living room reading a book. She was wrapped up in her own little world, and I could hear little bursts of laughter. It was nice to hear her happy, but then it happened. She called out a name, Mark. She said it so softly, almost lovingly, and I froze. My heart dropped. Mark? Who the hell was Mark? I racked my brain, trying to think if she had mentioned anyone named Mark before. I couldn't recall any friends or colleagues by that name. I tried to play it cool, but inside my mind was racing. I felt anger, confusion, and a pit of dread in my stomach. I finished cooking dinner, all the while pretending everything was normal, but it felt like my world was crumbling. After dinner, I decided I needed answers. I confronted her about it, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Hey, I heard you call out for someone named Mark while you were reading. Who, that?" Her reaction was immediate. Her face paled, and she stuttered for a moment before recovering. "Oh, it's just a character from the book I'm reading. You know how I get lost in those stories." She was defensive, her eyes darting away from mine. I wanted to believe her, I really did. But something felt off. I let it go for that night, thinking maybe it was just my imagination running wild. Yet the next few weeks were a blur of small signs that piled up like a tower of cards ready to topple over. Her phone buzzed constantly with texts that she seemed to hide. The late nights stretched into weekends where she'd excuse herself for girls' nights with friends I had never heard of before. I was becoming paranoid, and that paranoia was strangling me. One Friday night, I decided to do something I normally wouldn't do. I grabbed my phone and downloaded a tracking app in a moment of weakness. I told myself it was just for peace of mind, but deep down, I knew I was crossing a line. I didn't want to believe I was becoming that guy, the jealous, obsessive husband, but the nagging doubts wouldn't let up. After a week of felt like an eternity, the app delivered its damning evidence. I saw her phone's location pinging at a bar across town, a place I knew she frequented for girls' night. But the kicker, the location had a timestamp that didn't match her story. The guilt rushed in waves, and I felt like a fool for not seeing it sooner. I had to confront her again, but this time I was armed with the truth. It was time to peel back the layers of deceit. I had to know if my suspicions were right, and I was ready for whatever that truth would bring. The thought of what I might uncover terrified me, but I had to know. When the weekend came, I was a ball of nerves, my heart pounding as I prepared to lay it all out on the table. This time, there would be no escaping the truth. I knew I had to approach this confrontation carefully, but I was a bundle of nerves. As the clock ticked closer to when Sarah usually came home, I paced around the living room, running my hands through my hair and replaying every moment in my mind. I was preparing for a fight, ready to defend my sanity and my marriage. The adrenaline kicked in, and I felt both empowered and terrified. Sarah arrived home that night, her face slightly flushed from what I could only assume was a mixture of alcohol and the excitement of being out with her friends. She breezed through the door with a smile that didn't quite match the tension I felt in the air. My heart raced as I took a deep breath, trying to summon the courage to lay it all on the line. "Hey babe, how was your night?" she asked, slipping off her shoes and tossing her purse onto the couch. The casualness of her tone felt like a slap in the face. "Sarah, can we talk?" I said, my voice steadier than I felt inside. I gestured for her to sit down and she followed, but the smile faded as she sensed the heaviness in my tone. "What's wrong?" she asked, frowning now, her eyes darting with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Look, I do want to make an accusation, but I need to ask you about Mark. I heard you call out his name a while back. You said it was a character in a book, but that doesn't explain the late nights and the location I tracked last weekend." I felt a surge of frustration as I laid it all out. "I can't ignore this anymore, Sarah. I need you to be honest with me." Her expression shifted in an instant. The color drained from her face and I could see the gears turning in her mind as she scrambled for a response. "Jake, come on, you're being ridiculous. It's a book character. You know I get wrapped up in stories. And the late nights, it's just work." Her voice rose in pitch, each word laced with defensiveness. "No, it's not just work. You're lying, Sarah. I tracked your phone. You went to a bar and I have a gut feeling that you're with someone else. I can't sit here and play pretend anymore." I could feel the anger boiling inside me. My heart was racing and I was about to explode. She shot up from the couch, her eyes wild. "How could you do that? You're invading my privacy. This is so unfair." Her voice was high-pitched, and for a moment the righteous anger I felt began to waver, but I refused to back down. "I'm trying to protect myself from being blindsided. You've changed, Sarah. Something is wrong," I shouted, frustration spilling over. "I need you to be honest with me. Are you seeing someone?" She took a step back, her face twisting into a mask of disbelief. "Jake, you're being insane. How could you even think that? I love you." The sincerity in her words felt hollow, and I couldn't shake the doubt that clung to me like a shadow. "Then prove it," I yelled. "Prove that you're not cheating on me. Show me your phone, let me see your messages." The request hung in the air, heavy and loaded with unspoken tension. She hesitated, her eyes flicking away from mine. "That's not fair. You don't just go through my things like that." Her defensiveness felt like a wall closing in on both of us, and the silence that followed was deafening. I pressed on, desperate. "If you have nothing to hide, then you should have no problem showing me. Just show me the damn messages." Her face hardened, and for a moment I thought she was going to give in, but instead she shook her head defiantly. "No, this is ridiculous. You're trying to control me and it's not going to work." In that moment everything changed. All those feelings of confusion and doubt morphed into a sense of clarity. I realized that my wife, the woman I thought I knew, was hiding something from me. The anger I felt was now intertwined with the piercing pain of betrayal. It felt like a gut punch and I struggled to catch my breath. "Fine," I replied, my voice suddenly low. "If you can't show me your phone, then I can only assume the worst. I don't know if I can trust you anymore, Sarah. This isn't how a marriage works." She glared at me, her eyes blazing. "You're making a huge mistake, Jake. You're pushing me away with this craziness." "Maybe that's the point," I said, my voice wavering as the weight of the moment crushed down on me. I stood up, needing to escape the tension that swirled around us. I walked to the kitchen, trying to regain my composure. Every emotion I felt crashed together: anger, sadness, confusion. I poured myself a glass of water, trying to wash away the bitterness in my throat. How had we reached this point? I thought about the life we built together, the dreams we shared, and it felt like they were unraveling right before my eyes. As I took a sip of water, I could hear her pacing in the living room, muttering under her breath, and my heart sank further. I felt like I was losing her, and that realization stung more than anything. I didn't want to believe she was cheating on me, but the evidence was piling up and I couldn't ignore it. Would I confront her again? I didn't know. The anger simmered beneath the surface, but it was mingled with a profound sadness. I needed answers, and I wasn't sure how far I was willing to go to get them. That night, I went to bed alone, feeling the weight of uncertainty pressing down on my chest like a heavy blanket. That night was one of the longest I'd ever experienced. I sat in bed, staring at the ceiling, the darkness feeling like a suffocating blanket. My mind was racing, cycling through all the moments that led to this confrontation. The laughter, the late nights, the way she'd been slipping through my fingers like sand. I thought about the love we shared, the dreams we painted together, Now those dreams felt like a distant memory, all overshadowed by this gnawing uncertainty. I barely slept. The next morning, I woke up with a resolve I hadn't felt the night before. I needed to get to the bottom of this, and I had to be strategic. I couldn't let my emotions dictate my actions. I needed evidence, proof of what was happening. If Sarah was indeed cheating, I had to prepare myself for the fallout, no matter how painful it would be. I decided to start keeping tabs on her. I told myself it was just for my peace of mind, but deep down, I knew I was stepping into a dark territory. I followed her subtle patterns, when she left, when she got home, and even the little things like how long she spent in the shower or on her phone. It felt invasive, but it also felt necessary. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something monumental from me. Days turned into weeks, and my life transformed into a series of calculations and observations. I'd ask her about her day, and whenever she mentioned a meeting, I made a note of it. If she came home later than usual, I'd note the time and how she acted when she walked through the door. The paranoia was suffocating. One evening, while I was cleaning up after dinner, Sarah got a text message that caught my attention. I was standing in the kitchen and I saw her phone light up on the counter. The name flashing on the screen was unfamiliar, Cynthia. I felt my heart drop. Who was Cynthia? I quickly glanced at Sarah, who was in the living room, oblivious to my scrutiny. I waited until she went to the bathroom and snatched her phone. My hands trembled as I unlocked it. I had never invaded her privacy like this before, but the fear of losing everything clouded my judgment. I scrolled through her messages, my heart racing as I searched for anything that could confirm my worst fears. My eyes landed on the conversation with Cynthia, and I felt bile rise in my throat. They were talking about meeting up, planning a dinner, and there were playful emojis that made my stomach twist. "Can't wait to see you again. It felt so good last time," one message read. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Just then, I heard the bathroom door open, and I quickly set her phone down and resumed my task, pretending to be engrossed in the dishes. Sarah walked back into the kitchen, her face flushed and slightly damp from washing her hands. "Hey, what are you doing?" she asked casually, glancing towards the sink. "Oh, just cleaning up, you know me," I replied, forcing a smile that felt awkward on my face. "Thanks," she said, her voice light, but I could see the slight hesitation in her demeanor. I needed to confront her again, but the thought terrified me. How could I even begin to approach this conversation? I had uncovered something damning, but I didn't have concrete proof of an affair. I felt stuck, wrestling with the next steps in a battle I never wanted to fight. The following day, I decided to take a risk. I called in sick to work, using the day to gather my thoughts and plan my next move. I realized I needed to confront her about Cynthia, but I had to be calm and collected. I couldn't let my emotions get the best of me again. As the sun set later that day, I sat in our living room, waiting for her to come home from work. I rehearsed what I wanted to say over and over in my mind. But when Sarah walked through the door wearing that same tired expression, I felt my heart race with uncertainty. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, slipping off her shoes. "Fine," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "But we need to talk." She frowned, sensing the shift in the air. "About what?" "About your friend, Cynthia," I said, watching her face carefully for any reaction. Her eyes widened and she swallowed hard. "What about her?" "I saw your messages. You two seem pretty close. Is there something going on between you two?" I asked directly, cutting through the tension like a knife. She hesitated, and I could see the gears turning in her mind, but her hesitation only fueled my anger. "Jake, I don't know what you're talking about. Cynthia is just a coworker. We go out for drinks sometimes, but that's it. Just drinks," I pressed, my voice rising. "You've been meeting up with her after work more than just casual friends do. What else aren't you telling me?" Her eyes darted away, and I could feel the weight of the truth hanging between us. "You're blowing this out of proportion. I can have friends without it being a big deal," she retorted, but the way she avoided eye contact was telling. "Sarah, stop lying to me. I can feel it. This isn't just friendly. You need to give me the truth." The desperation in my voice was palpable, and I could see her battling with herself, trying to maintain her composure. She took a deep breath, and for a moment I thought she might come clean. But instead, she flipped the script. "You're being paranoid, Jake. This is why I didn't want to tell you I was going out with her, because you always react. Like this, you need to trust me. Trust you. Trust is built on honesty, Sarah. You're hiding something and I can't take it anymore. I felt like I was grasping at straws, but I knew I had to keep pushing. Maybe I wouldn't have to hide things if you didn't snoop through my phone. She shot back, her eyes blazing. It was like a slap to the face. I felt the anger swell up inside me, but I also felt the hurt digging deeper. So, you're just going to blame me for your actions? No, I'm not saying that, but you have to understand how suffocating this is, she said, her voice cracking with emotion. I stepped back, the conversation spiraling into a chaotic mess of accusations and defenses. I wanted clarity, but instead, I felt trapped in a web of lies and half-truths. The tears threatened to spill as I realized that our marriage was unraveling in front of my eyes, and I didn't know how to stop it. In that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this go on any longer. I needed to gather more concrete proof of what was happening, not just vague texts and suspicions. If she was cheating, I would find out for sure. It was time to turn the tables. I would become the investigator in my own life and uncover the truth, no matter how painful it would be. The next few days passed in a blur of tension and unease. Sarah and I moved around the house like ghosts, avoiding each other yet sharing the same air. I felt the weight of her presence, but it was tainted by betrayal. I barely slept, my mind racing with thoughts of what I was going to do next. I needed more evidence, something solid that would confirm my suspicions and give me the clarity I so desperately needed. I decided to take a more direct approach. I reached out to a friend of mine, Mark, who worked in surveillance and had a knack for technology. I explained my situation through gritted teeth, trying to keep my emotions from spilling over. Mark was sympathetic and offered to help. He suggested I gather more information by discreetly following Sarah for a few days to see where she really went after work and with whom. It felt like a drastic step, but I was tired of living in uncertainty. I trusted Mark, and I knew he could be a reliable ally in this dark chapter of my life. I couldn't tell him everything. There were just some things I didn't want to relive, but I laid out the basics so he would understand just how serious the situation was. The following week, I took on a facade of normalcy. I went to work, shared laughs with my coworkers, and pretended that everything was fine at home. But underneath that surface, I was an emotional wreck. I kept checking my phone, waiting for Mark to send any updates. I was anxious and hopeful all at once. It was a strange mix that left me feeling nauseous. Finally, after a few days, Mark called me. "Hey Jake, I've got some intel for you. Are you free to meet up?" I headed to our usual cafe, my heart pounding with anticipation. I slid into a booth and waited, my fingers tapping nervously on the table. When Mark arrived, he looked serious, and that made my stomach drop. "Okay, so I followed Sarah a couple of times," he began, lowering his voice. "First time she went to that bar you mentioned, but she wasn't alone. She met up with a guy." My heart sank at the confirmation. I had feared this moment, but now that it was happening, it felt like a punch to the gut. "Who?" I asked, my voice shaky. I didn't catch his name, but I saw them talking closely. They were laughing, and it looked pretty intimate. I couldn't stick around too long. I didn't want to raise any suspicion. "Did you get a picture?" I pressed, desperate for proof. "Yeah. I got a couple of shots from a distance." He pulled out his phone and slid it across the table. The photos were grainy, but they showed Sarah leaning in close to a man, their faces illuminated by the bar's dim lights. I stared at the images, a feeling of rage mixed with profound sadness washing over me. "This isn't just a friendship," I said, barely able to keep my voice steady. "This is an affair." Mark nodded, sympathy etched on his face. "I'm sorry, Jake, I really am. But you need to confront her with this. You deserve to know the truth." I felt tears pool in my eyes as I took a deep breath. "I thought we were happy. I thought she loved me." Mark leaned forward. "This isn't about you, man. Sometimes people just make stupid choices. It doesn't reflect your worth. You need to remember that." His words resonated, but they didn't ease the pain. I tucked the images away in my pocket, determined to confront Sarah. I had to be strong. I had to demand the truth, no matter how painful. When I returned home, I found Sarah lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone. There was something so casual about her demeanor that it made my heart race with anger. I approached her, my hands trembling with a mix of nerves and determination. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, my voice firm. She looked up, surprise flickering across her face. "About what now?" "About you and Cynthia. And the guy I saw you with at the bar," I blurted out, feeling the tension crackle in the air. Her expression immediately changed, eyes narrowing as if she were bracing for a storm. "What are you talking about?" Got back defensively. I pulled out my phone, the images still fresh in my mind. "I have pictures of you with another man. You can't deny it anymore." "What?" she gasped, her eyes wide. "You're stalking me now." "No, I'm protecting myself. You've lied to me for weeks, Sarah. I can't trust you anymore." I felt the frustration spilling out, a tidal wave of emotion threatening to drown us both. She stood up, crossing her arms defensively. "You're blowing this out of proportion. It was just a friend." "I swear, just a friend. Friends don't act like that. You were flirting with him, Sarah." I shouted, the anger boiling over as I felt the weight of betrayal crash down on me. "Jake, you have to believe me," she pleaded, stepping closer. "You're misunderstanding everything." "Misunderstanding? I have the proof right here," I said, showing her the images. "You're not being honest with me, and I deserve to know the truth." Her expression shifted from anger to fear, and I could see it in her eyes, the realization that she had been caught. "Okay, okay. I went out with him. But it wasn't what you think. I'm not cheating on you." "Then what is it, Sarah? Because it sure looks like an affair to me." I pressed, my frustration reaching a boiling point. She hesitated, her lower lip trembling. "It was just one night. I thought I could have some fun. I didn't mean for it to get out of hand." "Fun?" I echoed, disbelief flooding my veins. "You think sneaking around and lying to me is fun? You're breaking our vows." The tears spilled down her cheeks, and for a moment I was taken aback. "I'm sorry, Jake. I messed up. I was feeling lost and out of touch with everything, and I thought—" She trailed off, unable to finish her thought. "Thought what?" I challenged, my heart breaking at the sight of her distress. "I thought maybe I could find something I was missing," she admitted, her voice breaking. "But I didn't mean to hurt you. I really didn't." The room felt heavy with silence as I processed her words. I wanted to believe her, to grasp onto the remnants of our relationship. But the hurt ran deeper than I could articulate, and all I felt was betrayal. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She stepped closer, her eyes pleading. "Please, let's work through this. I love you. I just got caught up in a moment. I promise it won't happen again." I felt a part of me wanting to believe her, to work through the pain, but another part wanted to scream, to push her away. I needed time to think, to process everything. "I can't do this right now," I said finally. "I need space." The look on her face was one of despair, but I knew I had to be firm. I turned away, feeling the walls of our marriage crumbling around us. I needed to figure out what I wanted moving forward, whether to rebuild what was lost or to walk away from the wreckage and start anew. It was time to focus on myself and my healing, but the path ahead felt lonely and uncertain. I didn't know how to move forward, but I was determined to find a way. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions: confusion, anger, sadness, and even a flicker of hope tucked away in the back of my mind. After that confrontation with Sarah, everything felt shattered. The comfortable rhythm of our lives had been disrupted, replaced by an unbearable tension. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into the abyss, and I had to make a decision: either step back or leap into the unknown. I spent the next few days doing something I hadn't done in a long time, focusing on myself. I took time off work, not just to clear my head, but to reevaluate everything I thought I knew about my marriage. I needed space to think, and I filled it with long walks, late-night conversations with Mark, and the occasional therapy session to help me unravel my feelings. With each passing day, I felt the weight of the decision ahead of me becoming clearer. I was determined to understand what I wanted moving forward. I didn't just want to react out of anger. I wanted to make a choice that aligned with my values and what I envisioned for my life. During this time, Sarah reached out multiple times, trying to bridge the gap. She sent me texts apologizing, pleading for a chance to talk, and expressing her love for me. Part of me wanted to respond, to engage, but I also felt the need to protect my heart. I ignored most of her messages, letting them pile up unanswered. One night, while I was sitting in my living room contemplating my next steps, I received a call from Mark. "Hey man, how are you holding up?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. "Honestly, it's been tough. I'm trying to figure out what to do," I admitted. "I just wanted to check in. I know things have been rough with Sarah. Have you thought about what you want? I mean, for real?" he probed. "Yeah, I've thought about it a lot. I want honesty and loyalty above everything else. I don't know if I can trust her again, especially after what I saw," I replied, my voice tinged with sorrow. "Trust is huge, man, but people can change. It's up to you if you want to give her another chance, or if you think it's better to cut ties. Just make sure whatever choice you make is for you, not because of her." His words resonated deeply. I spent the next few days reflecting on what I truly wanted. I thought about the love we had shared, the life we built together, and the laughter that had once filled our home. But I also thought about the breach of trust, the hurt that lingered like a ghost in the corners of my heart. Eventually, after days of internal wrestling, I made a decision. I would confront Sarah one last time, but this time I wouldn't be defensive. Instead, I would lay everything out on the table, establishing clear boundaries and expectations. I wanted to give her a chance to be honest with herself and me. If she truly wanted to repair our marriage, she needed to face the reality of her actions. I texted her that I was ready to talk. The response came quickly. "When and where?" "Let's meet at the park this evening. I'll bring Max," I replied, knowing the tranquil setting would help ease the tension. When I arrived at the park, I took a moment to breathe in the fresh air. Max bounded ahead of me, excited to explore the area. I watched him play, hoping that whatever happened with Sarah would bring me clarity. After a few minutes, I saw her approaching. Sarah looked different, more vulnerable, with tears glistening in her eyes. "Hey," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hey," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. We walked side by side in silence, the sound of Max barking and running ahead filling the space between us. As we reached a secluded area of the park, I turned to her, feeling the weight of the moment. "I've spent the last few days thinking," I started. "I don't want this to be another fight. I want us to be honest with each other." She nodded, her expression serious. "I'm ready to listen," she said, her voice trembling. "Okay, first I need you to understand how hurt I am," I said, choosing my words carefully. "What you did shattered my trust. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. You need to own your actions and acknowledge the pain you caused." "Jake, I know I messed up. I thought I could find something I was missing in my life, but I didn't realize I would hurt you in the process. I never wanted to lose you," she said, her voice cracking. I took a moment to process her words. "Did you really think it was okay to keep lying to me, to sneak around? You did everything you could to hide it, and that feels like a betrayal." "I know, I was scared. I thought I could handle it on my own and that you wouldn't understand. But I see now that I was wrong," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "You deserve so much better than what I gave you. Sarah, if we're going to make this work, you need to commit to honesty. No more secrets. I can't live like this anymore," I said firmly. "I need to know I can trust you again." "I promise, Jake, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll be an open book. I want to fix this," she said earnestly, reaching out to hold my hands. As I looked into her eyes, I felt a flicker of hope, but I also knew that words alone wouldn't be enough. Actions needed to follow too. Rebuild the trust that had been shattered. "I want to believe you, but it's going to take time," I said slowly. "I need space to heal, and I need you to understand that I might not be able to forgive right away." "I understand. I know I have to earn back your trust. I'll do whatever it takes," she promised again, her grip tightening around my hands. I let out a shaky breath, feeling the weight of my decision settle in. "We need to figure out some ground rules for us moving forward, and I want us to seek counseling together. I think we could use the help." "Whatever you think we need, I'm in," she replied, her voice sincere. As I watched her, I felt a mixture of trepidation and hope. This moment could either mark the beginning of a new chapter or the end of everything we had built. I didn't know how long it would take, but I was willing to explore the possibility of rebuilding. "Okay. Let's take this one step at a time," I said, my voice steadier now. With that, our conversation shifted from accusations to plans for the future. We spent the next hour talking, laying out the groundwork for what would come next. It felt good to communicate openly, but I was still aware of the long road ahead of us. As we wrapped up our meeting, I felt a flicker of hope, the first glimmer in a long time. I knew the journey would be filled with ups and downs, but for the first time it felt like we were on the same path. I had made my decision, and whether it led to healing or heartbreak, I was ready to face it head-on. I walked away from that park, my heart heavy yet lighter than it had been in weeks. While I couldn't erase the past, I was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, one step at a time. The following weeks were a whirlwind of emotions as Sarah and I navigated the fragile waters of rebuilding our relationship. We began attending counseling sessions together, committing ourselves to the process of repairing what had been broken. It felt like stepping into uncharted territory. Both of us were learning to communicate more openly and honestly. The sessions were often uncomfortable, forcing us to confront feelings we had buried for too long, but it was necessary. In those counseling sessions, we tackled the root of Sarah's actions. We delved into her feelings of inadequacy and the pressures she felt at work, which led to her poor choices. It became clear to me that her affair wasn't just about infidelity. It was a cry for help, a misguided attempt to regain a sense of control and excitement that she felt was missing in our lives. I listened, and while the pain of betrayal still lingered, I could see glimpses of the woman I fell in love with. As the weeks turned into months, I realized that healing was not linear. There were days filled with laughter and connection, where we'd go on spontaneous adventures with Max, sharing moments that reminded me of the love we once had. Then there were the tough days, when memories of her betrayal would flash before me like a dark cloud, threatening to overshadow the progress we'd made. During those tougher moments, I found solace in self-care. I started exercising more, spending time with friends, and rediscovering hobbies that had taken a backseat during the turmoil. It was essential for me to reclaim my identity outside of our marriage. I learned that I had to find balance between working on our relationship and nurturing my own well-being. There were still times when I questioned whether I could fully trust Sarah again. I found myself needing reassurance, asking her about her whereabouts and her interactions with friends. Each time she responded with patience and understanding, I felt the cracks in my heart begin to mend, slowly and painstakingly, but they were there. With every honest conversation, every moment of vulnerability, we started to weave a new fabric of trust. One evening, after a particularly long day, I came home to find Sarah in the kitchen cooking dinner. The aroma of garlic and herbs wafted through the air, and for a moment it felt like a slice of normalcy. She turned to me with a smile, her eyes sparkling, and I felt a warmth spread through my chest. "I made your favorite," she said, her voice bright. As we shared a meal, I found myself laughing at her funny stories about work and her attempts at culinary creativity. For that hour, I was reminded of the joy we had once shared before everything fell apart. But as the evening wore on, I also felt an underlying tension, a reminder of our past. "Jake," Sarah said hesitantly as we cleared the table, "can we talk about the future? I want to make sure we're both on the same page moving forward." I nodded, my heart racing. "Sure, what's on your mind?" "I know it's going to take time for us to fully heal," she began, her voice steady. "But I want to change our dynamic. I don't want to just go back to how things were. I want us to grow together." Her words struck a chord within me. I agree. I don't want to just rebuild the old version of our relationship. I want something deeper, something that lasts. "I've been thinking about that too," she said, a determined look crossing her face. "I want us to be honest and open about our needs. I want to explore new things together, maybe even travel more or pick up a hobby we can do as a couple." I smiled at the thought. "That sounds amazing. I've missed exploring with you." We made plans that night, small adventures, new experiences, even a weekend getaway to a nearby cabin. It felt invigorating to lay the groundwork for our future together. We were no longer defined by the betrayal. We were choosing to redefine our relationship in a way that honored our growth. As the months turned into a year, I noticed a significant shift in our relationship. Trust began to rebuild, slowly but surely. We both learned to communicate openly about our feelings, fears, and desires. I found myself leaning into vulnerability, sharing my concerns without the weight of resentment. And Sarah, in turn, demonstrated her commitment through consistent actions and openness. There were days when the shadows of the past would creep in. I'd find myself feeling insecure or questioning her intentions, but I learned to voice those feelings instead of letting them fester. Each time I did, I was met with love and reassurance. As I stood in the living room one evening, watching Max chase after a toy, I realized how far we had come. I turned to Sarah, who was sitting on the couch, and felt a swell of gratitude for her presence in my life. "You know, I think we're actually doing this. We're making it work," I said, my heart full. "I think so too," she replied, her eyes bright with sincerity. "But it's still a work in progress. I'm committed to this, Jake." I smiled at her. "Me too. I want to keep fighting for us." In that moment, I felt a renewed sense of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be without challenges, but I was no longer afraid. We had both learned valuable lessons about love, trust, and forgiveness. I had entered this journey expecting the worst, and while it hadn't been easy, I also discovered strength I didn't know I had. I learned the importance of open communication and how relationships require continuous effort and nurturing. As I held Sarah's hand, I knew we were on a new path, one filled with both light and shadows, but together, I felt we could navigate it all. It was a reminder that even through the deepest betrayals, love can be redefined, rebuilt, and strengthened. We were willing to take the leap together, and that was a courageous step toward a brighter future.